welcome to the Warrior Enclave with Bebe and Toro, where we shatter our silence, we share our stories, and we believe women, period. Okay, so today's topic is about the Hague Convention and the many ways in which it has and continues to affect women, warriors like us. So many of you know my story. If you've listened to the podcast, Authenticity Warrior, okay. If you've been watching the previous episodes that we have up on the channel, you would know that, I fled my abusive marriage, myself and my 3 children, from Nigeria to Canada. And on getting to Canada, I was met with a legal mess where, it was like a long and drawn out thing. And, all of this was because of something called the Hague Convention. I think I'll just hand over to Toro to give us a breakdown of what the Hague Convention is, how it came to be, and all of that, and, the ways in which it's operating now today in our world.
All right, warriors. So the Hague Convention is one of those internationally applied laws that was set up in 1980 in Geneva, where these things often come about. And there are about 101 countries that are signed on to it, that are signatory to this convention, this law. And that includes all EU countries and most Western countries. This law was originally set up to mitigate men abducting children. I mean, not we all, but some of us, unfortunately, are privy to, our government sending out Amber Alerts whenever a child is missing or is suspected to be abducted. And almost every time you'll find that it's the man who is the one abducting the children, wrongfully taking the children for whatever reason. Often it's to, abuse their spouse or partner. So originally it was set up to mitigate that, but like many things that has been set up in this world of men, in this patriarchal world that we live in,
set up by men,
and not really from the perspective of women. And this law just then becomes blindly and mutually applied. What we have found is that in 3/4 of the cases that have been litigated under this convention, women have been harmed. They've been harmed by this law either as a result of losing custody of their children. This is after fleeing an abusive situation. So usually when a woman picks up and escapes and takes her children with her, she's often escaping domestic violence.
Or even domestic violence and also abuse against the children.
Abuse against the children, exactly. And I'm sorry, you abusing the mother of your children is you abusing your children, period.
There's no, he's a shitty husband to me,
but he's a great father. That's not anything. If you don't love the mother of your children
and don't treat her right in front of them,
or even without them, you can't convince me that you love your children. You don't. Everybody there is just there to serve you. You own them. You don't love them. So anywho, so what we're finding, and this is not just and
just to clarify, when we say what we're finding, it's not what we are finding in particular, but, organizations like the Hague Mothers, for example.
Right.
These are organizations that have been documenting the impacts of this Hague Convention on women. Okay?
Right.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify that point there. So it's not based off of our own personal research, which is also valid, but we're just
and also personally experienced. But yes, this is documented. This is researched. So without having that, I guess, room to scrutinize cases on a case by case basis, you'll find that the law is just, in fact, it's how will I put it? It's you flee from one country, you get to another one, and it's almost like the trap door or the whatever it comes down and closes right in front of you. It's a law that is applied at the border of the receiving country if both countries, that is the originating country and the destination country from where one escapes from to where one escapes to, if they're both signatory to that convention, automatically the children will be sent back. Or can be sent back, regardless of whatever the situation is. Yes. And that's what often ends up happening.
Oh yeah, so for most of the countries that have signed, they just apply the rules just like we already said. Just blanket. They don't really look on a case-by-case basis. There are some countries, however, through a lot of activism from organizations like the Hague Women that we're talking about, through, so many heartbreaking cases. Like I even just in preparing for this episode, I still read a case of this woman, like her husband, she was pregnant and not even her husband, her partner had forced her out of her own home country to come visit him. And then he trapped her there, forcing her to give birth in a country that was not her own. And then he used that. So she couldn't get back to her country. She somehow found a way, got back to her country. And then this guy used the Hague Convention to get the child away from her, to get the child from her. And that was his plan all along. She had documented evidence, submitted evidence of all the abuse, of everything he did, how he trapped her, how he kept her hostage and all of that. But none of that mattered with the Hague Convention. Again, we're talking about these kinds of, I don't know what the word is, just brutalistic, you can feel the coldness of these laws. You can tell that there literally was no woman in the room when these laws were being written. And that is just a fact. And so again, when we're even fighting, I consider myself a proud feminist. These kinds of movements are important because at the end of the day, it is down to these kinds of things now where some group of men are sitting down somewhere crafting laws and their blind spots are on.
Old straight white men.
Exactly.
I think we need to name some demographics here.
Yeah, they cannot conceive.
The vision is so tunnel, like you do not exist to them. So you're both hyper visible and invisible at the same time. And so, like again, just like the family courts, rich people are often under the wrong impression about, it is a meat grinder for women, femmes, and the children who are involved in this unfortunate situations. Like, the courts are not set up to protect women. And if they are, then it's deeply, deeply, deeply flawed because over and over and over again, like you survive being victimized by domestic abuse only to step into another.
And it's like you're punished for surviving.
Arena. Exactly.
It's like the very fact that you survived is like, then the abuse was not enough.
Yeah, exactly.
For us to, sometimes it's until literally, the perfect victim is a dead one. It is only at that point when people now want to be like, maybe we should have.
And then it's just too late.
Exactly. And it's like, excuse me, so many women are showing up literally almost at the brink of, I barely escaped with my life and the law doesn't care. So it's, again, to me, it's no surprise that in looking into the research, that has been put, that, these organizations have, have pulled out and they've seen that, look, 3/4 of the cases under the Hague Convention have been against women fleeing domestic violence situations and abuse.
And like you said, through activism and like fingernails crawling inch by inch, I think there are 2 countries now, Australia and Albania, who will now be scrutinizing cases for domestic violence and considering that before a return order is placed for the children to be sent back to the country of origin. But
I think there are a few more countries too as well that are starting to include that as well. But you guys don't understand how huge this is. The case I was speaking about earlier, it is her own case that actually sparked the introduction of this new element in Australia because she's Australian. So it is cases like hers, but what's heartbreaking is her case was used to enact this new element, but she's not a beneficiary of it at all.
Yeah, and that's not the default. That's like the exception to the application of this. So like,
and it's because she fought hard. She fought hard. 2 years. She kept on fighting and she still lost. That's to just tell you guys that, look, in fact, we're going to get into that into a later segment, but like those of you that have heard my story, you know, the only reason why Canada did not just send me back literally at the border was because Nigeria, in its chaotic self, did not sign that convention. So that is why I had the path that I had, which was to try and fight this thing in court. And in Canada. And I spent months. And if I could have actually kept going, you know, if I didn't run out of resources, run out of just energy, just, you know, run out of everything. Steam, really. And, you know, there was also a case as well that was before the Supreme Court in Canada that was deciding that very same matter. So we have all been fighting. Myself and fellow warriors in this country have all been fighting. But in the end, towards the end of last year, Canada now made its final decision on it, which is no. They will always, because my case was one of the few cases that got in where they're still trying to decide, oh, should we not? As at now,
because it was decided at the Supreme Court, it is now precedent.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's now standard that, look, no, they will always send you back.
Or send the children back.
Yeah, actually, let me clarify, they will always send the children back. Like that is now the
law of the land.
That is now the baseline.
The only way that can be changed is like by an act of parliament. And again, straight white men.
So it is. And you know, again, I also, we speak, the other things we speak about is research based, but I also encourage you to do your own research too as well. You know, of course, we're not perfect. We might be saying some things in error. You know, I'm a lawyer, but at the end of the day, you know, I can also still make mistakes. So I'll encourage you guys to certainly get into the research on this. But that is basically the way things stand now in Canada. And again, this is how these laws affect people. Because on one hand, there are cases like mine that through sheer will, sheer might, we pull together, we fight and fight and fight and push through, litigate this thing through courts. But it's a slim chance, okay? For the most part, you are likely to lose.
That's just a sad truth.
I'm so hard pressed to see instances where these women were not further traumatized through these systems. And by these women, I mean all of us, myself included.
So if you're a warrior who is one of the lucky ones who has this privilege of dual citizenship, and when you make your escape, you're able to escape as far away as possible to your second home country,
or even your primary country.
Or your primary country, exactly. This is something that needs to be considered because it could affect you. So again, like my sister said, the only reason why she even stood a chance where this didn't just filter her out immediately she stepped foot in court, is because the country that she left from, Nigeria, is not a signatory to this convention. Canada is. And so what ended up happening was, we were trying to litigate who had jurisdiction, Canada or Nigeria. We followed this all the way up to the appeals court. And like we said, we didn't make it through. The children were ordered to be returned back to Nigeria, and, you know, Canada said that's where jurisdiction should be. At the time that we were in the appeals court, there was a Supreme Court case going on, which was similar. And I just wanted to highlight this warrior a little bit, just because our cases are so similar, you know, we're going through these things, supposedly in silos, but there's just such a pattern, to how these things play out. So, this warrior is she's both a Pakistani and Canadian woman. I think she had moved and lived in Canada since she was a teenager, had gone through high school here,
just like
university education, all of that. And then she married a man who, is also a citizen of another Middle Eastern country separate from Pakistan. And then she moved back home, lived with the man. I'm not sure.
Well, she didn't move back home.
Oh, she didn't move back home. She moved to his country. So back to the Middle East. But I'm pretty sure like they were still kind of back and forth because like the way she made her escape was under the guise of, coming to Canada with the children for, however it is that they come here, whether it was holiday or just the routine time that they spend in Canada as well. And so once she did get to Canada, she wasn't going to go back to her abusive situation. And that's where, her legal battle unfolded, going all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I mean, we already said it, but wouldn't you know it? This woman who is as much Canadian as she is anything else, has, the legal documentation, to back that up. Her children were ordered to be returned, to the Middle East. And so
she was in this battle for over 2 years.
Over 2 years.
Yeah. And of course, as usual, yeah. Honestly, I don't know what to say.
Patriarchy on patriarchy, misogyny on misogyny. And like, everyone is affected.
Like it was, the whole thing was, because that's why I call you guys warriors, because like we're all in this together. Like our lawyers were in conversation, because it's like they were sharing resources back and forth. We were giving tips back and forth and everything. But of course she was, higher up in the process than I was. So in a sense, I was relying on her case to help me out. In the end, what was even so heartbreaking was my case was now then weaponized against her. They actually cited my Court of Appeal case.
Right.
Where they ruled against me. They used that as well as part to buttress the point that they were also already trying to make in sealing her fate in that. And it was just so upsetting. Like I had to I actually sent her an email personally, just encouraging her, because by that point, mine was already done. My children had already gone back to Nigeria and all of that. So I knew exactly how she was feeling. And, what is upsetting to me is that these laws, these men that are crafting these laws are doing real damage.
Yeah. And it's just the way it's set up. It's just the way it's set up. Like the way like white supremacy essentially affects everybody. Because now, like I said, it's the law of the land. I truly, honestly, strictly believe that had it been like a blue-eyed, blonde-haired, Irish Canadian, British Canadian, Australian Canadian, things might have gone differently for her. I say this keeping intersectionality in mind, because there's still women, and again, go to the family courts here. We're all there, the white women, the black women, the whatever, remember, we're all there getting chopped. But white supremacy sets up this false hierarchy, and the lower you are on it, just by your being, you're already like, you're fighting a losing battle, because like I said, here we are, dual citizens. It's almost like you're being punished for having 2 passports. The whole know your place aggression. And I know this because this was all languaged in the ruling.
I was just about to say that I don't want to seem as if, we're just making a mountain out of a molehill.
Oh no, I refuse to be racially gaslit.
Yeah, this was peppered in quite clearly.
The microaggressions, the racial
in everything that was written there. There was all this, you could tell I was being punished for, number one, having dual passports. I was being punished for the social economic status of my family. I was being punished because I did not look like
for supposed birth tourism.
Exactly. I did not look like the quote unquote black woman that's even if
supposed to be.
Yeah. Even if they are to help me, I don't look like the way the way they believe I'm supposed to look. I was a little too put together, a little too polished, a little too educated, a little too all of that. So
a little too a little too fucking magic, baby. We know what it is. Like, please. So it's like, and that's why I said the existence of it it's a contradiction in itself. And so it can never make sense. There's no point trying to explore that dissonance, because the bottom line is the bottom line. We refuse to be what you want us to be. We are who we are, and that's the way it's gonna be.
And these kinds of things, again, flesh and blood cannot reveal it to you. If you think, oh, I don't know what I'm saying, or maybe I'm just making him out, okay, no problem. I can't convince you.
So it is what it is.
It is what it is.
But now it's the law of the land. So even now, like I said, the Irish, Canadian, the one who even presents right, looks right, does whatever right, because of that inherent anti-blackness, anti-immigrant, anti-this, anti-that, you see how it just slowly comes up to affect everybody now who is not a man, non-man, because most times the primary caregiver of the children, the most times the folks fleeing abusive situations is women and femmes, and so now we're all affected by this negatively.
And I think it's important to clarify again that from the research, it is clear most men, when they're taking the children, it is really to punish.
Yeah, it's not for
the primary caregiver. When the woman is...
Or for child abuse.
Exactly. When she's fleeing with her children, it is not a joyride or I'm trying to punish anybody. She is fleeing for dear life with her children. She is their primary caregiver. How will she leave them behind? Like, that's just the one that I just don't understand. In all the sayings, in all the doings, in all the why did you? Okay, what should I really have done? And which is why, when we were mentioning this in one of the episodes we've put up on the channel before, was like, look, it is heartbreaking to say, but the way this world is set up, if you are to escape, you have to actually put on the table the possibility that you may not be able to live with your children, as heartbreaking as it is, as gut-wrenching as it is.
Or if you live with them, you might not be able to successfully maintain them.
Because of this thing, I'm telling you, the pain, the trauma of having to do all of this and to be met with weird thinking like, oh, why did you take the children? Like, and then to be punished for that can,
where is the sense? Where's the humanity?
Do you understand?
Where's the love for the children?
So I'm telling you, women, like, the way this world has just been set up, honestly, I really do pity you sometimes, but, and that's why we're here. We're warriors, we're fighting, and we're going to keep fighting. Okay? So, that's
thriving.
Exactly. Jaye part is certainly necessary. So yeah, of course.
Okay. We're wearing buttons today. I don't know if you guys can see them. Sporting the Hague Mothers logo on there. And the Hague Mothers is one of the organizations that has taken note of how this convention has been affecting women and their children, and just like allowing the cycle of abuse to continue to proliferate generationally, really, and just causing all sorts of trauma and tragedy everywhere. So this is an organization that fights and lobbies for the law to be reformed, if not struck down. And then they also advocate for women who have been affected by it. They usually address cases mostly in the UK, Australia, and the US.
Yeah, and Europe too as well.
And Europe, okay, yeah.
Europe, yeah.
They usually center those women.
And most of the people in this organization have all been affected by this law.
They've been victimized by the Hague Convention. And so, this is a group, again, advocating for, fighting for, and centering, women whom this convention has been applied against and has, adversely affected them and their children. Some women to this day are still alienated from their children, going on 7 years. They have stories all up on their website. If you just Google the Hague Mothers, it'll pop right up as the first search thing, as the search result. And you can see all the different stories that have been going on there, as well as the strides they've been making, in that scene. And I think they have, a conference or so, I think annually, but you can look at their calendar of events if you go and check out their website. But these are one of the nonprofits that are doing the work to help us warriors.
Yeah, I think from me, I do want to highlight them because when I was going through what I was going through, I told you so many, women who have carried the activism or like these issues, and are fighting it nationally within Canada as well. And also internationally, had reached out to me. So one of them in particular, she was going for the conference. So she was like, she's going to bring my case to the organization, have them take a look at it, see what could be done, all of that. At the end of the day, there wasn't much that could actually be done because the decisions from the courts had already come out. So, but of course I was just met with just so much love, words of support, solidarity, just encouragement to keep up my fight. They were even trying to encourage me to open a chapter in Canada. I was like, I'm just like, it's authenticity warrior, please.
That's my one.
So, but like, yeah, they do have their conferences, almost every year, I believe, because I know, because of the pandemic, things have kind of stalled a bit, but like, I think they're back in full gear now. So, yeah, it is a very difficult club to be a member of, because you can only be a member when you have seen Shege
and bastard on breakfast.
So it is tough, but like what I love is how we just hold each other up. There's the ways in which people are a part of this organization. Our stories are so different, so unique. Our lives look very different. There's some women that, this Hague Convention, it forced their children back into the hands of their abuser. Some of these women followed their children back. Not all of them have lived to tell the tale. Some of them have lived to tell the tale, but they still lost their children in the countries that they follow their children back to, because that's another thing, guys. Sometimes when you now go back with your children, the legal system then now punishes you for living with the children in the first place.
It'll become like, what's it called?
Exactly.
And often I just wanted to interject here. Often when women make that decision to move, like for your case in question, you left Nigeria and the chaos and like in the misogyny there, hoping that Canada might be more of a haven, and more progressive in addressing your case. So oftentimes when you're even making that decision to leave like that, it's because you're trying to avoid the legal system in the home country to even begin with.
Because you already know how you are going to be, disadvantaged, especially in third world countries like Nigeria. You already know there are just some things that, would be markers against you, so.
Not only that, like again, the chaos, the inefficiencies, the slowness,
the fact that till now nothing has actually progressed in Nigeria.
Movement.
Because there was an election in Nigeria, so everything has stalled. And this is just part of what I mean. If Canada had just simply had sense, everybody would have already moved on with their lives. Both parties would have already resolved the custody issue. You have access, everybody has their access, and the children are better off for it. They are Canadian citizens. There's no reason why that should not be a consideration, right? But of course, now in Nigeria, the abusive people, they know how to weaponize chaos. And we all know how Nigeria is, how chaotic the environment is. So they have weaponized the chaos and now sat on everybody's destiny. Nobody can move forward. Do you understand what I mean? So a lot of the time, so some of these women where they follow their children back, in the end, they were still punished for it. They still lost out. The children are still firmly under the thumb and grip of the abuse they were fleeing from in the first place. So that is difficult. For some women, like me, who have refused to go back because we know truly what it is that we saw there, and we said, never again, never again. They say, affliction shall not rise again.
Even God forbid.
God forbid, okay? Those of us that didn't go back, and it's unfortunate, a lot of us are enduring something called parental alienation. Some women have not seen or heard from their children in years.
Again, have to point out that parental alienation is child abuse.
It is child abuse because people think, oh, access to the child is about the parents' rights. Like when you actually look at it in law, it's actually the child's rights. It's about the child's rights to both parents. It's not about my right to my child. The right that is actually being violated here is my child, my children's rights to me. That is what is actually being violated. So that's why for me, I can never, ever respect anybody that ever tries to play in that arena. It is disgusting. It is violent.
It's abhorrent.
And, for me, I'm a person of faith. I personally believe the angels of children are constantly in the presence of God. Play with this thing at your own risk. The karma that is coming to get you, you will cry alone. So again, a lot of women are still don't have access to their children, years, and they're still knee deep in this fight. They are not giving up because that's the one thing that our children will know. They will know that their mother fought for them. There's no narrative that any abusive parent wants to spin. Those children will grow up and they will know that their mother fought for them hard. So there's that. Then there are some women that, how can I even say this now? Eventually, after much had been expended, energy, resources, time, lives had been held up,
mental health
of
both the children and
resources depleted, finally the rainbow did come out. They did see the sun again and they're happily reunited with their children, but it doesn't take away from the years of the chaos and the harm that was inflicted because of these kinds of laws that really and truly don't see women's issues at all.
And this stuff happens all the time. Like, it is mundane. It happens all the time. There was a case I read, it was earlier this month. This happened in the US. It circulated a little bit, but it was an American woman. She had fertility issues, so she had children a little bit later in life. She was living with just a horrible partner, extremely abusive, got to the point of, initiating divorce. She herself was a lawyer, living with this abusive individual. She had to battle cancer. Even while she was trying to fight that and recover from that, he was not being, cooperative in any way whatsoever. In fact, the abuse, as it even escalated. So anyone, the partner was the more moneyed partner. So of course, litigation, abuse, spent, I don't even know how much money. I don't even want to put, but it was a lot. She ended up losing.
I think the partner was also a partner at a law firm.
So they were
weaponized resources, weaponized his own firm to just out-lawyer this
outspend her. And then she ended up losing. She lost custody. Parental alienation kicked off. Her older child was still able to,
to insist on
seeing her and not even and still be able to relate to her, because parental alienation is not just withholding the children from the other parent. It's also warping their minds and grooming them to hate. You're grooming them with hate. It's so disgusting. And so the younger, and these children, they adapt to what the abusive parent is insisting on to survive. Otherwise, they're going to get it too. So, she got another flare up. She got ill again. The cancer came out, she came out of remission. And, she made a tragic decision, because by that point, her younger children were calling her by the first name. Every time, she could tell that every time they would, by force through the courts, insist on a visitation, she could tell that they're going to be for the worse off when they go back to their father.
If they even have fun with her or feel safe with her or enjoy their time with her, when they go back, the children get punished for even that.
So it was just heartbreaking for her to watch her children like that. And, she made the decision to go to Switzerland and undergo assisted, what's it called again?
Self-euthanization?
Yes. She took the euthanasia, route. I forget what exactly it's called, but we'll look it up and put it. Just to end it, the suffering and to not,
and also to spare her children.
So when you think about that, like the kinds of situations and decisions that women have to make again every day on the day, how many are actually losing their lives like livestock, just globally, like. I think we as a society, we really need to start like holding men more accountable. You need to hold yourselves accountable because this cuts across the board. You will find that white men are abusing white women. Black men are abusing black women. Asian men are abusing Asian women. Indigenous men are abusing indigenous. There's no separator. There's no poor men are abusing poor women. Rich men, like there's no anything, no categorization, no separation of class, no anything where you will have men and women coexisting and women and femmes are not being harmed, like violently harmed. On the daily,
whether you clock your own abuse or not.
In this version of patriarchy and misogyny that we're living in 2023 and have been for, thousands of years prior. So we need to just continue to evolve as a species. Women continue to divest from this bullshit because that is what it is. It's bullshit. Hey, let me tell you, the weapons that are formed against you as a woman is marriage and children. Let me just clock it and clock it good.
And negotiate how you want to exist as a mom, as a wife.
If that's what you want,
you better lawyer up.
Doing no sacrificial lamb because if you're naive, that is what you are.
Yeah, like I'm not saying you should not be a mother. I'm not saying you should not be a wife because that might be your calling. But you better lawyer up in that arena. And I mean that. I mean that literally, but I also mean that in terms of that shining your eye. Like show up to that negotiating table with your full chest, ready to collect every single thing you need to thrive in those roles.
That you are due.
Anything less than that, and I can promise you, whether you admit it to yourself or not, you are chopping breakfast. Whether your own looks like my own. Because that's another thing too. I found that I'm calling you out now. I'm calling you all out. So some of my well-wishers, I know some of them when they call me or they're reaching out to me, they are calling to confirm that their own is not like my own. They are calling to make sure that at least
you have that comfort of at least I'm not her. Auntie, you are her. You are she. We are all we women.
If you think you're going to do at least my own husband is not like her own ignoramus or her own is not like that ogre that she married. I pity you, my dear. Like me, I've already been saved though. As you're looking at me, I have been delivered. So you better open your eye and negotiate the terms of how you want to be married, how you want to be a mother, and stand on that shit because I'm telling you, only you can deliver and save yourself.
Period. No, we have to keep it real. We have to keep, like, the truth is the truth. That's just it. And we're tellers of truth. We're seers of truth. And we're bravely talking about what we have seen, what we know, and he and she who has ears, let them hear. That really is it. This isn't a message. It isn't a lesson that can be stuffed down anyone's throat. But we can only hope that, as you are learning your own life lessons, keep your eyes on the people around you, on your community. And when I say that, I mean mostly like in how you identify, because that's how the world projects on you. And there's some lessons that you already have the cheat sheet because, somebody already did the PhD in it and is like, yeah, here's the notes, baby. So learn from others around you as well. Be self-aware and be community aware. And so I think that ends it for today's topic at the Warrior Enclave. Once again, we see you, we believe you, and we hear you over here.
Keep fighting, y'all. Bye.